Ever since the invention of science, there has been science fiction. Stories of the amazing technology of tomorrow, and all the things it will unleash upon the Earth. In the last few centuries, the genre has flourished thanks to incredible authors like Philip K. Dick, Arthur C. Clarke, Isaac Asimov, and Robert A. Heinlein. It makes sense that when Kazuki Akane was figuring out what to follow up the Escaflowne movie with, he looked to these pillars of the genre for inspiration. But which author should he homage? Which concept should he explore? There were so many good ones, it was impossible to decide. So he picked all of them. I'm Click Diggums, and today we're looking at what happens when you throw every sci-fi book you could find in a blender and set it to anime. Geneshaft. Geneshaft, or Gene Shaft if you're watching on Tubi, is a 2001 anime produced by Bandai Visual. It was co-animated by Satellite, the studio behind the first chunk of Fairy Tail and a bunch of Macross stuff, and Studio Gazelle, which made a couple OVAs before becoming anime mercenaries. And for better or for worse, animated they did. For those of you too young to know /remember/care, the early 2000s were a time of transition. Cells were out, digital animation was in. Problem was they were still figuring out how animating on a computer actually worked. Combine that with the show's attempt to blend 2D animation with CGI, and you get something that can be impressive one minute, and quality the next. Don't worry though, the asses are consistently well done. Seriously, someone on the team was an ass man. Even the skirts have an ass. Even the puppet has an ass. The story's about this girl, Mika Sato. She's insecure because it's 200 years in the future, and she's white. I can explain. Basically, in the show's lore, humanity's near collapse in the 21st century was blamed on male aggression. To combat toxic masculinity, society somehow gets people to agree to a 1-to-9 ratio of men to women. Love and sex are eliminated, and people are told to live their lives as a replaceable cog in the machine. Just like real Japan. Unlike real Japan, this mentality is enforced by the fact that everyone is a test tube baby genetically engineered to do a specific job. Ship captain, fighter, tech whiz, literally perfect. You name it, there's a gene color for it. White means the genetic traits which define your role haven't developed yet, and that's really weird for someone Mika's age. It might also imply brain damage because Mika's dumb as a brick, but we'll come back to that. Anyway, Mika's in the military, and she's been assigned to a super secret space mission by this asshole, Captain Hiroto Amagiwa. And yes, it is weird that men are blamed for the near collapse of society, but still get to drive the enormous warships. Just go with it. Oh, and Mika's buddy died on Amagiwa's watch, so there's a little bit of tension too. When they're not trying to kill each other, the crew is investigating this funny little guy that's been vibing the planet's atmosphere. They make contact, and it pulls the Starship Troopers. Whoops! Lucky for humanity, the crew is in control of the only thing that can stop the alien threat. The Shaft, a hilariously named mech covered in thick tubes. The pilots are called out via D-selection, and hold up, there's way too much dog imagery here. Okay, look, even the ship looks kind of sus. This has got to be intentional. Dongs aside, the plot of the show is the crew dealing with the alien rings, while this guy sneaks around and screws them over. The show tries to convince you he is an evil, but it doesn't work. Look at this guy. His name is Lord Sneak. He shoots someone in the first episode. Can you really call it a spoiler that he's up to no good? Speaking of spoilers, Geneshaft throws a lot of famous sci-fi tropes into its story. Aliens attacking Earth, genetic engineering, mysterious space giants, rogue AI, time displacement, aliens pretending to be humans, betraying your space government, teleportation, it's all here. Even the episode names are references to classic sci-fi novels, like Inherit the Stars, The Ship Who Sang, and Childhood's End. And that's kind of the problem. It takes a while for Geneshaft to find its voice because it's too busy being a sci-fi greatest hits reel. As you might have guessed, genetic engineering is the main topic, but the show never really sinks its teeth into the idea before getting distracted by something else. To be fair, there are a few interesting quirks. Mika's got a dog with a blog, for one, and unlike most mecha, the program running the shaft barely works. They actually bring in a contractor to make it stop crashing every 5 minutes, and even with a supposedly perfect fix, things still go wrong. It's the most realistic portrayal of computer science I've ever seen in fiction. So props where props are due. Unfortunately, these quirks aren't enough to keep the show from feeling derivative. It got to the point where I was wondering if I was being too harsh pointing out all the references, but the episode names were training me to do that. And then they made Europa a massive plot point. That's a clear nod to 2010. I can't just ignore that. The characters don't help the show much either. Most of them are pretty thin, and they tend to either do nothing or act like idiots. Miss Perfect here has more pride than Vegeta, and her plot gives me damn flashbacks to Nina from Gundam 83. The captain's kind of an asshole, even though he technically makes all the right decisions. This one doesn't do anything for like 90% of the show. And Mika herself is frustrating. She keeps doing things that should get her ass court-martialed, but nobody calls her out on it because she's the main character, Shaft pilot, the main Shaft pilot. The fact that her gene type gives her unlimited potential also kinda screws over the show's theme of breaking out of your societal programming. And since I brought it up, for a show about people who are the pinnacle of genetic perfection, it seems like half the cast is completely insane. Case in point, Dulce Saito. Whip. Tiki Room. She doesn't seem too bad at first, but...
Stop talking!
The plot tries to justify her being there because she's a genius programmer, but the only thing she really does is create a subplot that feels like a cry for help. And her puppet is really annoying. It got to the point where I wanted somebody to destroy the damn thing. And for those of you who think it might just be a dub issue, I watched the show subbed. She's just as bad. She irons out by the end, and I'll admit she doesn't ruin the show, but my eyes glazed over whenever she was on screen. That's not to say all the characters are bad. Beatrice is cute, and she has an actual character arc. It's simple, but it's done pretty well. Sophie is a flat character, but she's fun and charming, and I like muscle girls, don't judge me. And then, there's the main man himself. Mario Musicanova. This guy is so based, he pretty much saves the show. He's technically the backup captain, but he does a way better job than Captain Shortsleeves. He knows how to motivate his crew, he knows when to drop the hammer, and on his off time, he's single-handedly bringing love back to the universe. He's so cool he basically hijacks the show for 2 episodes, and I was thrilled. They even gave him his own arch-nemesis. I won't say it's worth watching the show just for him, but he'll probably be your favorite part. Unfortunately, now that I've talked about the best part, I gotta talk about the worst part. The third act. I'll try to talk around spoilers, but, stuff's gonna leak through, so if you plan on watching this and want to be totally surprised, skip to here. Still with me? Okay. There's one death that was done really well. Like, I'd steal... borrow it in my own writing. It's so good. But you know those 3 characters I just mentioned? The ones I really liked? 2 of them die. And they don't get the good death. One is a little contrived, but it ends in a badass way, so I'll give it a pass. The other comes out of nowhere, and not in a good way. I'm talking about the I had to go on a forum to see if I missed something kind of comes out of nowhere. There's no build-up for why that specific course of action killed them, and you never get an explanation. It's just forced character drama. Or at least, it would be if everyone didn't move on after 5 minutes. That happens a few times, actually. Something bad happens, people feel bad for half a second, and then they immediately move on. It's even worse in Mika's case. Most of these tragedies involve someone she knows dying, but she always seems more concerned about her gene type and her hatred for the captain. If the captain supposedly killing her buddy is the core of her motivation, you'd think death would affect her more. I mean, Miss Germany over here is pretty much the only one who actually cares about what's happening. But again, her plotline reminds me of Nina's. And much like Stardust Memory, Geneshaft has a disappointing finale. The big twist for the final battle, quote-unquote, is too easy to see coming, for one. I mean, the show's only 13 episodes, and I called what would happen in episode 5. The fight doesn't even last that long. And when it ends, the Rings are defeated by a poorly explained instant win condition, and the show just stops. I wasn't expecting much, and I will admit they kinda hint at that win condition I mentioned, but it still felt like a letdown. I suspect even the production staff gave up partway through. There's a noticeable lack of energy in the next episode blurbs from episode 10 on. And by the end of the show, there are a bunch of plot lines that are just left hanging. There's one character who might be a clone, maybe. There's a council that, like, rules the earth. There's terrorists. None of that really gets dealt with. Now I'm sad. I'm gonna prank the people who skip the spoilers to feel better. So yeah, the 8th plot was a little weird, but hey, I don't want to be too much of a downer. Let's talk about something good. Most of Geneshaft's soundtrack slaps. We got tunes that go like... and guitar riffs like... and then they hit you with the... and you're like, nice. The ending theme is a little... but even then, the OST is pretty good all around. The only real flaw with it is that sometimes it's a little too extreme for what's happening on screen, but it's rad enough that I'll give it a pass. And credit where credit is due. Geneshaft did manage to score an American release. A full dub aired on Tech TV's Anime Unleashed block in 2003, and the whole show got a DVD release. It was released over 4 volumes in 2003 or 2004, and it got 2 complete collections, one in 04 and one in 06. As for its reception, well, yeah, Geneshaft bombed. The proof? It's a show filled with cute girls, and there's almost no merch for it. A couple soundtrack CDs, some light novels, and a manga are all I could find. And even then, the manga's untranslated. The shaft never got a model, which, isn't that big a loss, honestly. It looks really cool, but the thought of actually building it seems... painful. And none of the girls got immortalized in plastic. There aren't even any grunge kids. Hell, there's barely any Rule 34. Do you know how badly a show about cute girls has to do to not get Rule 34? So, yeah, Geneshaft was a disappointing follow-up for Akane. Should you watch it anyway? Well, it's hard to recommend, but I wouldn't write it off either. As I mentioned earlier, it's available on Tubi, so it's free and legal. And nobody's really fighting for the rights, so it should be up there a while. It's short enough you could burn through it in a weekend, and there's a few diamond-in-the-rough moments nestled in all the jank. Maybe grab some beers to go with it, but with the right mindset, it's a nice turn-your-brain-off anime. And it's got my man Mario, so at least there's that.
Mario?
Thought I'd pay you a visit before we die, Sean.
Oh my god, he's so goddamn cool!
I'm Click Dickums. Thanks for watching. If you want more, like, subscribe, comment, etc. Peace.